that what we're looking at is evidence of some kind of transfer of technology, that people came into that area who had other knowledge.
Beneath the sands, hidden in caves, locked in stone.
Today we're going to explore a mystery, the Clerksdorp spheres.
Archaeologists found things that defy explanation.
Egyptians thought that the force that moved the sun across the sky was a giant scarab beetle god, Khepri.
In 1952, archaeologists were digging around Cave 3 near Qumran when they stumbled upon something totally unique. The only Dead Sea Scroll that wasn't made of parchment or papyrus, but instead, it was etched into thin sheets of copper. When they carefully unrolled it, they found a detailed list of 64 spots believed to hold tons of hidden treasure. The directions included specific landmarks and distances, but none of the places mentioned were recognizable. If the treasure is real, it could be worth billions today. What really threw researchers for a loop was its plain, coded style.
Absolutely the kind of treasure list you would expect to find in a fiction book about a treasure.
Treasure described in the copper scroll must have been temple treasure.
Is the treasure real, or is it fabulous, kind of fairy stuff?
Unlike the other scrolls that are poetic or loaded with religious meaning, this one felt straightforward and almost like it was written in a code just for practical use. It detailed talents of gold and silver, fancy vessels, and sacred items. But whose treasure was it? Some think it belonged to the Second Temple priests, stashed away before the Romans had their siege on Jerusalem in 70 CE. Others believe it was a decoy designed to mislead enemies or people who weren't supposed to find it. Many teams have tried to track down the locations listed, but all they've found is dead ends. The landscapes have changed, landmarks are missing, and some clues seem purposely tricky. There's even speculation that the scroll is part of a bigger system of hidden records that could be stashed away in caves, yet to be discovered. So far, the treasure has never been found, and reports say there's no solid proof it exists. Still, there are whispers about quiet recoveries that never see the light of day. If those whispers are true, the Copper Scroll might just be the only remaining map to one of the biggest treasures in history. But if it's all a trap, someone out there probably has the real deal hidden away somewhere. They went looking for a burial site, but instead found a vast underground maze that seemed more like a trap for the living than a tomb for the dead. Under the sands of Sakara, there's a huge maze of tunnels packed with mummified animals, mostly cats, which were considered sacred, lying there in a creepy stillness. The walls are covered in weird symbols that nobody has really figured out yet, and in the faint light from torches, you can spot sealed boxes, broken statues, and oddly placed tools that seem like offerings for something mysterious.
When it comes to trying to understand Sakara, it's very confusing and disorientating because there's so much going on underground. That's what's so bizarre about this place. Some people have suggested that there's some kind of magic there, some kind of power that's in the land. So we've got this real mystical world going on beneath the surface.
As explorers go deeper, the air feels heavier and their gear starts acting up, with cameras failed without explanation. Some archaeologists think these tunnels were more than just burial sites. They could have been ritual chambers used for ceremonies that have been lost to time. In the darkest corners, where no light has shined for thousands of years, there might still be doors that nobody is brave enough to open.
The strangest, most enigmatic, most powerful, encompassing the Great Pyramid Complex, massive field of energy that we can't even duplicate today. And you have to ask, why was it built? Who built it? What is going on here?
They said it came from a maze of tunnels hidden beneath Ecuador's jungles. When Father Carlo Crespi first saw those shiny plates and carved tablets in his courtyard, he instantly realized they were something special, not like anything known. The designs were strange, too strange. Some bore symbols that looked nothing like the patterns of known pre-Columbian art. Some even resembled Egyptian hieroglyphs, Sumerian cuneiform, and Brahmi script from ancient India. One gold plate carried 28 characters identical to those used in India during the 3rd century BCE. If authentic, it meant something unthinkable, that civilizations separated by oceans and millennia might have shared knowledge or contact. Crespi's collection grew rapidly. Shuar tribesmen brought artifacts by the hundreds, so many that visitors claimed the courtyard overflowed with golden plates and figures. Thousands of objects filled his small museum, each one seemingly rewriting the accepted history of the Americas. But history did not preserve them. Fires in 1962 and 1974 consumed much of the collection. Theft and looting stripped away more. By the time of Crespi's death in 1982, the most extraordinary items had already vanished. Some claim the Central Bank of Ecuador quietly acquired what remained. Others insist the rarest and most controversial pieces disappeared without a trace. Skeptics say Crespi was deceived, handed crude forgeries made from cheap alloys, crafted to sell to outsiders hungry for mystery. They point to European travelers who identified some items as modern reproductions. But believers reject this. To them, Crespi's treasures were fragments of an ancient metal library, a preserved record of pre-flood knowledge, hidden for millennia within the tunnels of Cueva de los Tallos. The caves themselves are real, kilometers of pitch-black passages inhabited by oil birds, accessible only with Shuar guides. Yet no official expedition has ever confirmed Crespi's description of the library. According to public records, it was never there. But what if it was simply never meant to be found again? Beneath the sands of Catacombs lies a chamber that feels more like a shrine than a tomb. Here, in the dim silence, dozens of mummified crocodiles rest, some small enough to fit in a palm, others stretching several meters. Each one was wrapped up carefully and lined up perfectly, almost like they were waiting for a big ceremony. Archaeologists discovered charms and little trinkets placed next to some of the crocodiles, suggesting that these animals were more than just creatures. They were seen as honored protectors linked to the crocodile god, Sobeck.
Not only did they have the traditional images of God kept in a sacred place, but they also had live crocodiles here who were the personification of the god Sobeck. And so people would come from miles and miles around to go and visit the god, to make offerings to the god, and also sort of to be in the presence of the deity himself.
The way everything was laid out, the sheer number of finds, and how they were intentionally arranged point to complex rituals that most people today wouldn't fully understand. This isn't just a burial site, it's an underground tribute where ancient people paid respect to creatures they believed could connect the living with the divine. Even now, the real reason for this catacomb hangs in the air, keeping its full story a secret. 1996, Bahariya Oasis, a stretch of desert few had reason to explore until the sands gave way to a secret that had been sealed for nearly 2,000 years. Underneath the cracked ground, there's this wild spot called the Valley of the Golden Mummies. Hundreds of bodies are lying around, many decked out with shiny death masks that catch the light like they're made of molten gold. It's kind of creepy how well preserved they are. You can still make out even the tiniest details of their faces, staring back at you as if time just hit a pause button. Among the mummies are kids, nobles, and others whose stories we can't really figure out. There are even hidden rooms filled with untouched pottery, jewelry, and personal items, like gifts for an audience that isn't there. And then there are these sealed passageways that go deeper into the dark, leading who knows where. Everything hints that this place is more than just a regular graveyard. It feels like a sacred spot for someone or something that wanted to be remembered forever. The desert seems to guard the last chapter of their story tightly.
Now, in Mexico, more secrets have been revealed about the ancient city of Teotihuacan. Researchers have spent years digging beneath the surface.
The search began with the rumor of a secret chamber, maybe a tomb, maybe a king lost to history. Instead, they broke into pools of the most toxic liquid mercury.
Is that the mercury cannot exist in its native form in nature.
It wasn't just a tiny bit or a few drops stuck in some old container. We're talking about shimmering pools of the stuff.
The logistics behind this are incredible. How was it transported there? Where did it come from? And for what purpose?
Glistening like molten silver in the dark, buried deep in the heart of Teotihuacan. Back in 2003, a sudden sinkhole at the bottom of the Temple of the Feathered Serpent opened up a narrow stone block tunnel that had been sealed off for nearly 2,000 years. Archaeologist Sergio Gomez Chavez led the dig, unaware of what waited in the dark. The tunnel stretched almost 100 meters into darkness, leading to 3 hidden chambers buried 60 feet below the ancient city.
As they continued down, they found 3 more chambers at the end.
Inside, they found thousands of artifacts that had been left untouched. Jade figurines, carved shells, and loads of shiny pyrite spheres. Tiny objects reflecting light like little suns. And then, the Mercury lakes. These miniature landscapes were hauntingly perfect.
Large quantities of liquid mercury. This rare discovery deep within the pyramid has archaeologists scratching their heads.
Almost like the builders were trying to recreate the underworld itself. Hauntingly perfect, like rivers of darkness reflecting the sky. In Mesoamerican culture, a river like that might guide a soul to another world. But here, it felt more like some kind of message or a warning. There wasn't a royal tomb in sight, no writings to clarify why this was all here. Official reports mentioned ritual offerings, but Mercury isn't something you find around here. It had to be mined and brought in from far away, in amounts that just don't make sense. Some theories even suggest that folks back then might have known about electricity, since Mercury played a big role in it, and some artifacts from pyramids kinda hint at that idea. So do you think those people were way ahead of their time, or are we just lagging behind? July 2018. Construction crews in Alexandria cracked open the ground for a routine project and hit something that wasn't supposed to be there. Buried deep was a massive black sarcophagus, its polished stone surface absorbing light like a void. The lid alone weighed several tons, sealed so tightly it hadn't been disturbed in over 2,000 years. When it was finally pried open, the air reeked of decay. Inside were 3 skeletons floating in a strange reddish-brown liquid, with no inscriptions, no markers, and no clue to their identities. The design didn't match nearby royal tombs, and experts couldn't explain why it was buried alone. Whatever story it held had been deliberately erased, leaving only an unshakable sense that it was never meant to be found. If Father Crespi's vanished metal library was truly a record of forgotten history, then what lay hidden in the mountains of China could be something even older, something not of this earth. In 1938, an expedition led by archaeologist Chipu Te ventured into a remote cave system in the Bayanhar Mountains near the Tibetan border. They expected caves, but found walls marked with strange pictograms of the sun, moon, stars, and strangely elongated figures unlike anything in human history. At the center of one chamber lay hundreds of thin, circular stone discs. Each was about a foot across, pierced neatly at the center, and etched with spiral grooves so fine they seemed decorative, until closer inspection revealed they were actually lines of microscopic symbols. Years later, a professor from Beijing's Academy of Prehistoric Research allegedly managed to translate parts of the inscriptions. The story they told was unlike anything in human history. A race called the Dropa had fallen from the sky some 12,000 years ago, their craft crippled by terrible thunder. Unable to repair it, they settled, or died, among the mountain tribes. But the translation was said to have been withdrawn before publication. Official records erased mention of both the stones and the professor. He reportedly retired soon after being silenced, some believe, for revealing too much. The Dropa stones themselves vanished, some say into government vaults. Others claim they were dismissed and destroyed as hoaxes. If real, they may be the earliest proof of contact with something not human. But what came next was never explained. And according to the public record, the Dropa stones never existed at all. If you're enjoying peeling back these hidden layers, make sure you're subscribed, because the next discovery might just change everything you thought you knew.
Today we're going to explore a mystery, the Clerksdorp spheres.
1952, in the dusty mines of Ottosdal, South Africa, miners were just trying to dig up pyrophyllite, a rock that's been buried for billions of years. But instead of finding anything valuable, they kept pulling out these strange, smooth, metallic spheres. They looked machined, perfect, with grooves like they'd been cut by tools, and some even had deep grooves around the middle, almost like someone had cut them with a tool. When they tested these things, it turned out they were anything but ordinary rocks. Some were made of pure hematite, while others were a nickel-steel alloy. Pretty weird for stuff that supposedly formed 3 billion years ago, back when life was still just tiny microorganisms. Even weirder, some of the spheres were so perfectly balanced that if you set one on a flat surface, it wouldn't roll, even if you gave it a little nudge. Geologists just brushed it off, calling them natural concretions, and that was that. Yet no lab has ever recreated them, and nobody can really figure out why they're found in rocks older than multicellular life. A few of these oddities are on display at the Clerksdorp Museum behind some glass. To visitors, they're just strange curiosities. For researchers, they're a real puzzle. And for the rest of us, they raise some intriguing questions. Could these things be ancient calibration tools, or maybe leftovers from a civilization we're not meant to know about?
If the ancient people were looking at the sky for extraterrestrials, and then essentially a sort of a present was sent to them in the form of meteoric iron, this would have been something just so valuable to them and auspicious, because it was literally coming from heaven.
They weren't looking for alien metal, but they found it, hidden among one of Europe's greatest gold treasures. In 1961, archaeologists studying the treasure of Villena in Spain stumbled upon something that shouldn't exist: a bracelet and a small ornament that weren't made from earthly iron at all. Tests showed they were forged from meteoritic metal rich in nickel, the kind that only falls from the sky. The date? Around 1000 BCE, centuries before the Iron Age reached Iberia. Back then, shaping regular iron was rare enough. Forging high nickel alloys should have been impossible then. Whoever made these didn't just recognize the rarity, they mastered it. Egypt's boy king Tutankhamun also had a dagger made from meteoritic iron.
To find meteorite iron used in ancient Egypt, that's well before when we were regularly using iron as humans. That's when we would call the Iron Age. The ancient Egyptians were much more in the Bronze Age, where we were working mostly with bronze and metals like that. So it was very uncommon to find iron.
Did ancient people witness fireballs streak across the sky, then collect the celestial fragments? Or were these objects traded from distant lands? Or perhaps gifted by something not entirely human? Mainstream archaeology calls it rare but possible. But when you look at the Villena pieces, delicate, precise, and impossibly advanced, you start to wonder if they were more than ornaments. Maybe they were proof of a pact sealed between Earth and the stars. It looked like just another clay jar, but when archaeologists opened it up, they didn't find any scrolls, coins, or jewelry. What they found was a bit surprising: a copper cylinder sealed with asphalt that had a corroded iron rod inside, and it looked like it was designed for something specific. This discovery happened back in 1936 near Kujut Rabu, just outside Baghdad. Dating put it somewhere between 250 BCE and 650 CE, right in the thick of the Parthian or Sasanian periods. Years later, Wilhelm Koenig, who was in charge of the museum lab in Iraq, took a look at it and tossed out an eye-catching idea. It could be a galvanic cell, or in simpler terms, an ancient battery. They made some replicas, and when they used grape juice or vinegar as the electrolyte, the device actually produced small but steady voltages. This wasn't speculation, it worked.
So as we put in our electrolyte, then we drop in our element, screw it on tight. The original Baghdad battery seal was asphalt or tar, but we're not doing that.
But what would a civilization from over 2,000 years ago need electricity for? The most interesting theory? Electroplating, coating silver with gold. If that's true, it would push our understanding of electricity way back, beyond Benjamin Franklin, Faraday, and Volta, into a time when Rome was still around. But skeptics raise some valid points. The jars don't have the right wiring, and there haven't been any electroplated artifacts found from that era in that area. Plus, other jars that look almost identical have been found containing papyrus fibers, which hints they were probably used for storing scrolls, not as batteries. The academic debate has been going on for decades. Was this ancient tech ahead of its time, or are we just reading too much into an old object? Even now, there are enthusiasts who can't resist experimenting with it, drawn to the idea that ancient engineers might have tapped into forces they didn't completely grasp. Official history tends to dismiss it as a myth, but without clear answers, the question remains, what if this wasn't just some old jar, but a clue to a long-lost era of science? Strange discoveries like these make you realize history is never really buried. If you're drawn to uncovering the secrets carved beneath the sands, then you're in the right place. Subscribe to this channel so you don't miss anything. It doesn't belong to its time. A perfectly shaped, three-lobed stone disc with curves that look like they were made by a machine, almost like it belonged to something way more advanced. Some say it looks mechanical, like a hubcap or a propeller. But back in 1936, when it was dug up from a First Dynasty tomb in Sakara, Egypt, it had already been buried for over 5,000 years. The tomb belonged to Sabu, a high-ranking official. This disc is totally unique for its time, about 61 centimeters wide, just under 10 centimeters tall, made out of schist, a delicate stone that would have been super hard to shape without modern tools. Its lobed design looks practical, yet the civilization that carved it left no clue why. Most scholars say it must have been ceremonial, maybe a fancy bowl for oil or grain offerings for Sabu's afterlife. Others think it was just a status symbol, something that was never meant for everyday use. But then there are the more unconventional archaeologists who see it differently. They think it might be designed for something, like a model of a lost machine part, or even, as some ancient astronaut theorists go, a stone version of alien tech. A few experiments with 3D printed replicas showed it was aerodynamically balanced, but not useful as a turbine. Some even suggested it could have been a tool for weaving, but the artwork seems way too elaborate for that. Now, this disc sits quietly in the Egyptian Museum in Cairo, drawing more questions than answers. It doesn't really fit with the tech known from its time, nor does it match the tools available back then. If it were just ceremonial, why is it made with such precision? If it had a practical use, where's the rest of whatever it was part of? According to official records, it's just an artifact, but what if it's a leftover piece of something that's meant to be forgotten? And that's where we leave today's descent into the unknown. Ancient artifacts hidden for centuries still whisper secrets we can't crack. If you're as intrigued as we are, hit subscribe and stay close, because the next time the Earth opens up, who knows what else might surface.